morning and welcome to Rising. We've got an astonishing amount of news to get to today. It's great to have you back in studio, Jessica.
It's good to be here to process the weekend's events with you all.
Yes, let's get into it. Obviously, we must dive into the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. In a moment, we'll tell you everything that we have learned about the alleged shooter. First, we want to look back at that horrifying moment on Saturday in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Take a look at what happened.
The shooter has been identified as a 20-year-old man named Thomas Crooks from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. He was shooting from a rooftop roughly 400 feet away from the president. Now, Crooks worked at a nursing home as a dietary aide. He had a clean background check when hired. He used an AR-15 rifle, which officials believe was purchased by his father. Bomb-making materials also found in the car that he drove to the rally. He is presumed so far to have acted alone. His political leanings not immediately clear. Crooks was registered as a Republican, but he also had donated $15 to a progressive political action committee on January 20th, 2021, the same day Biden was sworn into office. Now, FBI officials have not found any threatening comments on social media accounts. They've been working to get access to his phone, so we might learn more after that. Other details also emerged about Crooks' past. This is how one of his classmates described him. Let's watch.
He was bullied almost every day.
In what way? Can you explain?
I mean, he would sit alone at lunch. I mean, he was just an outcast, and you know how kids are nowadays, so.
Crooks was turned away from the school's rifle team because he was a bad shooter. He also received an award for math and science his senior year.
Meanwhile, while Trump has arrived in Milwaukee ahead of the Republican National Convention this week, he will make a speech Thursday and is expected to call for unity. Speaking to the Washington Examiner, Trump said, quote, "This is a chance to bring the whole country, even the whole world together. This speech will be a lot different than it would have been 2 days ago." Trump also wrote on Truth Social, quote, "In this moment, it is more important than ever that we stand united and show our true character as Americans, remaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win." And in a separate post, Trump said, quote, "Unite America." Now, Trump and Biden spoke to each other Saturday night after the shooting on the phone. A lot of people have speculated as to what was said in that conversation. And there are some people familiar with the Act Blue data set. And Thomas Crooks, the donor on January 20th, 2021, was actually a 69-year-old man in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the voter file. So it
may not be the same.
It may not be the same Thomas Matthew Crooks, just Thomas Crooks, 69 years old. So we're waiting for confirmation that he had ever donated to the Progressive Turnout PAC. But it does seem to me that the initial suspicion that this could be someone who is a Democrat who wants Joe Biden to win, someone on the opposing team, everyone was worried about that. And because they were worried that there would be retaliatory violence. And I think a lot of people are relieved that the caricature doesn't fit that.
Yeah, well, we just have no idea right now. I know some people who knew him in school described him as at that time seemingly right-leaning or conservative. Of course, that was a long time ago. His views could have changed. His views might have no connection to what he did. You know, presidential assassins, would-be presidential assassins in the past have been motivated by as diverse a range of factors as sincere political commitment, as in the case of the person who assassinated President William McKinley, was a committed ideological anarchist, to, you know, would-be shooter Hinckley Jr. Motivated by like love of Jodie Foster. So it could be explicitly ideological. It could be not ideological at all. We just have to wait for more information, and we'll get to in a little bit. We're going to turn to kind of the reaction from conservatives in the media and how people are, you know, parsing this in terms of blame and fault and the rhetoric, the heated rhetoric going on right now. But I was going to save that conversation for just a few minutes later. But right now, I think this is an incredible 3 weeks we have just lived through as Americans in terms of the amount of significant news developing. Donald Trump was almost assassinated. He came within an inch of being killed. while running for re-election on the cusp of his fortunes. His likelihood of being re-elected president after 4 years have never been higher, according to the polling, according to the really bad couple weeks Joe Biden has had in terms of his debate performance, in terms of his fitness for office, the concerns increasing in that regard. And Trump was almost killed. We have to make there's no getting around that fact that it's incredible. And I understand why some people are going to be looking for conspiracy theories and insights. How could this happen? Because it is frankly incredible that the bullet grazed his ear. He's fine. He was slightly injured, but he's fundamentally unharmed. That's the kind of thing that when it happens in TV and movies is implausible. But it happened, and it's incredible. I think everyone should be very, very grateful, obviously, no matter how you feel about Donald Trump, that he was not gunned down as a result of political violence in this country. Then we could have had rioting and an actual second civil war that people naively fantasize about or expect to be happening. There could have been rioting in our streets, in addition to the psychic shock to the nation, in addition to the just horror of a president being killed. We came this close to that happening.
Right, this is a political movement. It's not just one guy, but they are all behind him. And they are steadfast in their support of him. So it would be such a void in a political movement. They would be missing a leader if Trump was shot and was killed, or was shot and injured enough that he wasn't able to continue the campaign. And that kind of void is incredibly destabilizing. So all of the people that are on social media that don't like Donald Trump, that wish him to be dead, that is a group of people that have been very vocal since this happened. That is my worst nightmare. I've lived in rural America. I've seen what Trump supporters say when you ask them about the state of the country. They believe we're on the brink of civil war. This is something that could catalyze a civil war. People thought January 6th could have. And so to think that a successful assassination would somehow be better for the country, it undoubtedly would not, because the anger would be directed at everyone who's ever said anything unfavorable about Donald Trump, anyone who questioned his agenda. There would be no one else to direct their anger to, and it would be so much anger that it would probably not be possible to be contained in a peaceful way. It could be horrible for our country if something like that happened.
So, Donald Trump, in the moment, he's shot at, he gets down, Secret Service covers him. We have a lot of views and ideas about Secret Service's actions during this whole thing and how they even allowed this to happen in the first place, that we're going to get to next on the show. But so Trump is covered, and then he gets up, raises his fist. This iconic photo is taken. He is headed to the RNC. He's there now. The Republican National Committee is happening this week. I just saw it reported that he's going to announce the vice president, his vice presidential selection later today. He's speaking later this week. I think he's said to journalists that he's rethought his speech to focus. He's refocusing it onto themes of political unity and overcoming our strife as a country. This is Donald Trump's moment, and he has you see reporting that many Democrats have just totally given up hope that there's even a chance Joe Biden could win. So this is Trump's moment, and he has the opportunity to do something that no political figure has done in the last 10 years, to actually try to unite the country, or to rise above the division and to speak to themes that matter to all Americans, to rise above his own inclination often to be very focused on anger and divisive themes and carnage and all that. This is his time to rethink his approach and really speak to themes that would propel him toward a massive, massive victory in November. Massive landslide in the Electoral College and also in the congressional races, the Senate, the House, et cetera. He has that opportunity next time he speaks.
Right, and this is the photograph made him look very cool, according to many people, that he has blood on his
Many
face.
people are saying he looks very cool.
Many people are saying he's a hero.
Everyone is saying he looks very cool, because he does.
It's a hard photo, I'll say that much, and it's the kind of photo that leaves a lasting impact. It's on the cover of Time magazine, and I think while that is one thing, this producing a spiritual awakening in Trump and having him give speeches that are inspiring about unity, I think that could catalyze a launch into the presidency. If he continued with the same type of rhetoric we saw before this, after this, I don't think it would have the same effect.
Yeah, I mean, the photo is cool because it reflects something that it reflects actual bravery and courage on his part. To be, at first when we were watching it happen, it's
There could have been a second shooter.
There could have, right? No, it could have been. He was fired on. Someone behind him was shot in the head and killed instantly. There were also injuries, and he was injured. And to seconds later to stand up, you're right. There could have been another shooter. From his position, I don't know that he knows the shooter was actually neutralized. To stand up again and do that did reflect actual bravery. There's a lot of bravery in the crowd. We didn't really talk about that, but people who attempted to render first aid to the person who very sadly was killed. The crowd did not panic. They got down. They did what you're supposed to do in the event of a shooting. There was not people stampeding over each other. It was a very well-handled moment by a lot of people there, but by bystanders, by civilians. I don't know about the Secret Service. We have different kind of notions about that and how this was allowed to happen that we're going to turn to next. So stay tuned for more Rising. We're going to be talking about this all day. Lots of angles to get into. Stick around. Some breaking news. Florida Judge Aileen Cannon has dismissed the classified documents case against former President Donald Trump, saying the special counsel prosecution is in violation of the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. Now, Trump had been charged with illegally holding onto highly sensitive state secrets after leaving office and obstructing the government's effort to retrieve them, the infamous Mar-a-Lago raid. Now, in this 93-page order, Judge Cannon wrote that, quote, upon careful study of the foundational challenges raised in the motion, the court is convinced that Special Counsel Smith's prosecution of this action breaches two structural cornerstones of our constitutional scheme: the role of Congress in the appointment of constitutional officers, and also the role of Congress in authorizing expenditures by law. Marks a huge win for Trump on the first day of the Republican National Convention, and after a series of political wins and surviving attempted assassination, now he's set to officially become the party's nominee at the end of the week. On Truth Social, Trump wrote in part, quote, as we move forward in uniting our nation after the horrific events on Saturday, the dismissal of the lawless indictment in Florida should be just the first step, followed quickly by the dismissal of all the witch hunts. Reacting on X, the New York Times' Maggie Haberman wrote, quote, hard to overstate how big a deal this is. The case was widely seen as the clearest cut of the four. Similarly, legal analyst Jonathan Turley wrote, quote, the dismissal of the classified documents case is a seismic development. From the beginning of all of those cases, I have said that the Mar-a-Lago case was the greatest threat to the former president. It is now dismissed. Turley added that, quote, the opinion is still an outlier among the courts that have reviewed this question. Meanwhile, Congressman Matt Gaetz tweeted a picture of Judge Cannon with the caption, future Supreme Court Justice Cannon. MSNBC anchor Chris Hayes wrote that, quote, just to be crystal clear, SCOTUS has upheld special counsels repeatedly. Cannon is a district court judge, and her job is to apply controlling precedent. She's doing this because she thinks the MAGA court is on the same page as her, and that Trump's lawyers will go along. Harvard professor Lawrence Tribe similarly wrote, quote, Judge Cannon just did the unthinkable. She dismissed the Trump classified documents case. He repeatedly rejected basis that DOJ violated the Constitution's Appointments Clause by appointing Special Counsel Smith at all. DOJ must appeal right away. On SCOTUS, only Justice Thomas took the view in Trump v. the United States. This finally gives Jack Smith an opportunity to seek her removal from the case. And Fox News reporter wrote, quote, the momentum and timing of this news cycle is unprecedented. Truly remarkable. Yes, indeed. I feel like
Come on,
if I
Aileen.
saw, come on, Aileen. Okay, that's a good one. Just say if I saw the headline like Trump wins Mega Millions jackpot, at this point I would believe it. Just what a favorable series of, obviously being almost assassinated is not a favorable development, but he is unharmed and is going to be able to use that to his political benefit in terms of the optics of it and the photo he took. And if this makes him disciplined in showing unity and bringing the country together, as I said earlier, he really has this tremendous moment. Now he is he has a favorable ruling in the documents case, which I absolutely agree was the clearest cut of the various cases. There was just no argument that he didn't do it and that he did not return the documents. Now, whether that was ever going to matter all that much, whether it was a weighty issue in the minds of voters or what consequence he was going to suffer for it, might not have been all that clear. But it was his involvement in it. It was a very easy thing to prove and to demonstrate. But they are saying, Judge Cannon is saying, that the appointment of Jack Smith was not constitutional. Now, Jack Smith is obviously in charge of the more serious case, the January 6th federal case. So if the argument is he was appointed wrongly to oversee the Mar-a-Lago case, then I think that argument would hold as well.
This is also not the first special counsel Trump has. He's got a lot of special counsels because he's a really special guy, Robbie.
Special counsels for special people.
The Robert Mueller specific special counsel case. Interesting that the legal team for Donald Trump raised similar constitutional questions about the appointment, and they were unsuccessful. Also, special counsel case, David Weiss, Hunter Biden, another case where this potentially could have been raised, but Aileen Cannon made clear that Weiss is different because he was already a U.S. attorney at the time of being appointed, and Smith was a private citizen, and that is the main difference there. That is why this stood, while the others didn't. There's also this question of presidential immunity given the Supreme Court ruling. What does that mean for Trump's other cases where Jack Smith is special counsel? So there's a lot going on here because, Trump's a special guy, but he did call for on Truth Social, let's just drop all of these in the name of unity. It's all this big witch hunt because the deep state hates me and wants me dead.
Yeah, I am not in a position, this is breaking news, we're just reacting to it live. I'm not in a position to adjudicate the constitutional issue here. I take Chris Hayes at his word, which might be totally incorrect of me to do, that this issue has been before the Supreme Court in the past, and only Justice Thomas was skeptical of a special counsel appointed this way. So perhaps this will be subjected to additional legal scrutiny by a higher court, and it will be overruled. However, again, this will delay any resolution of this case beyond. I mean, it's been dismissed, so it's not ongoing unless there's a lawsuit and a higher court decision. So even if somehow it ends up getting reinstated, that's going to be well into what looks like Trump's second term at this point.
And he'll have immunity then, of course, and so.
So yeah, it's.
But that's for official acts while he's president. I don't know that we can say this counts. But he
It's a
did take the
favorable
documents while he was president. Maybe he just never looked at them or touched them when he was out of office, and so the immunity does apply. We don't know, but I think we can anticipate that this will reach the highest court.
Yeah. Again, the issue in the documents case, not literally every, but so many national political officials also violated this law by keeping documents that they should not have had, including Mike Pence and Joe Biden. Now, they both returned them when they were asked nicely to do so. Trump said no, so that was the difference there. I have a little bit of question about documents being overly classified, and it seems to me if federal officials and political candidates are routinely, flagrantly violating this law inadvertently, that probably says that we classify way too many things, or documents that ought to be declassified, or ought to be things the American people can process and see what's really going on behind the scenes. Too much of that is going on, and so was Donald Trump ensnared in again a kind of deep state thing where, because there is this knee-jerk secrecy and classification, and he didn't follow that protocol, he ends up in trouble. Now, he could have obviously just saved himself a lot of consternation here by returning the things when he was asked to do so. But
and of course, Robbie, you say this because you're very passionate about the topic of State Department officials and members of the security community telling us everything they know about the aliens.
The aliens, yeah.
And you have a very measured take on
I
air,
know.
but every time we cut to break, he's talking about the aliens. He's wondering where the documents are.
Where are the bodies? Where are the alien bodies? Where are the... No,
This is Trump's take. Trump should say, as a real populist, I'll tell you all about the aliens.
Maybe that'll be the next...
I had a spiritual awakening. I'm going to be forthcoming.
Maybe that will be the next unbelievably positive headline for Donald Trump. Donald Trump discovers, meets with, comes to peace accord with aliens.
They just have weeks of bangers lined up for us.
Oh.
They're ready for it. This was all staged to make him look cool. Next week, something about aliens. It's going to be great. They are running a hell of a campaign.
What a day. More Rising right after this. The Secret Service is under scrutiny for their handling of the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump at his Pennsylvania rally on Saturday. Now, after gunshots were heard, the Secret Service brought Donald Trump down to the ground on stage and then walked him off it and put him in his limousine. President Joe Biden is directing an independent review of the Trump assassination attempt. Here was his message from Sunday afternoon.
I've directed an independent review of the national security at yesterday's rally to assess exactly what happened, and we'll share the results of that independent review with the American people as well.
A Secret Serviceman neutralized the shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, after he fired multiple rounds from the roof of a building that was 148 yards from the stage. The question everyone is asking is, how did the shooter get on top of that building in the first place without attracting notice from the police? Now, why didn't security have that area covered to begin with? The Secret Service coming under fire also in a Wall Street Journal piece from yesterday. It reads, Trump shooting is Secret Service's most stunning failure in decades. Former Deputy Assistant Secret Service's Director, Bill Pickle said, the reality is there's just no excuse for the Secret Service to be unable to provide sufficient resources to cover an open rooftop 100 yards away from the site. There's no way he should have got those shots off. YouTuber Dan Bongino wrote on X, USSS Director Kim Cheadle must resign. She was warned about this, and she ignored the warnings. I want to repeat and can absolutely confirm. The USSS Director Kim Cheadle has repeatedly turned down requests for a larger security footprint around President Trump, despite knowing the threat level is catastrophic.
It also came to light that Trump's usual security detail was not working on Saturday. Real Clear Politics White House reporter Susan Crabtree wrote, new information from a source in the Secret Service community. Trump's usual protective service detail was working hard 7 days a week with no days off. That many of the agents assigned Saturday were temporary replacements from different field offices. Security waited until the shooter was down to bring Trump off stage, but it appeared that his head was not fully covered as he was brought into the limousine. Conservative commentator Matt Walsh wrote on X of this, there should not be any women in the Secret Service. These are supposed to be the very best, and none of the very best at this job are women. And Meghan McCain chimed in as well. This is why the notion that men and women are the same is just absurd. You need to be taller than the candidate to protect them with your body. Why do they have these short women guarding Trump? This is embarrassing and dangerous.
So, yeah, a lot of scrutiny being placed on the Secret Service. I think everyone is really confused as to why it was even allowed that the shooter was able to get onto that building. You know, we're learning more about the arrangement for the speech that Trump gave. You know, this was in a fairly rural area, not like a lot of giant buildings or something, not tons of people. You know, this building sticks out to you if you see the overall map of where Trump was speaking. Like, you know, knowing he was going to do this speech, that building seems like a likely place if there was going to be some kind of shooter to be stationed. And so the idea that they were not able to prevent that is really a major failing. And then also, you know, we saw interviews with people on the ground there that have been on social media. The BBC did a really good one with a spectator who was saying, and I've seen subsequent videos that demonstrate this, of the bystanders noticed the shooter first. They saw the guy on the roof, and there's videos of them saying, hey, there's a guy on the roof. Like, this is alarming. You know, we're always told that, you know, see something, say something is like the attitude of modern, you know, security times. We're told, you know, speak up, and, you know, why don't people say something? And time again, here's a crystal clear example. People did say something. It's just the response from the officials was too slow.
Absolutely, yeah. They're pointing to the rooftop. So many people posted videos on social media from the scene at the rally saying, we were all pointing, we were all waving at Secret Service. They weren't doing anything. And Tim McMillan, who's a former security detail for vice presidents and presidents, posted a long thread about what possibly could have gone wrong. And he explained that there's an inner tier, that's where the woman was, who was shorter than Trump, I'm sure there are women taller than Joe Biden and Donald Trump out there. I think the point is not about the gender, but rather the height, right? A part of the job is you put your body on the line to protect the president, the vice president, whoever you're on the detail of. And so because she was ducking under his head, leaving a clean shot, a lot of people made it about her being a woman, but really it's about her being shorter. And so that inner tier jumps on the president or whoever they're the detail of, vice president, first lady. That's the inner tier. There's a second middle tier, and they're assessing threats in the crowd, people who could possibly jump on stage, things like that. Then there's the extend tier, which is for extremely long distance threats, things like snipers. But Tim McMillan said this was likely under the purview of law enforcement. And we have heard reports that a law enforcement officer did attempt to go up on the roof and had a rifle pointed at him and retreated. And that was moments before Secret Service took the shots. We've heard some conflicting reports on what happened, but it sounds like in between that second middle tier of Secret Service and the extend tier, it was the responsibility of local law enforcement. And there's just not a lot of communication before big events like this about who's responsible for what. That's not enough. But it seems to be what happened.
I'm waiting to get more information on the police response so that we know exactly what happened here, because the way you just summarized it, it sounds almost like a Uvalde type situation where the police didn't, which is contrary to the training. If there's a shooter, the police are supposed to rush the shooter. So the idea that he backed off and then thus allowed the shooter subsequently to fire those rounds is very concerning. Now, I will say, I saw someone suggest, well, what if he was hanging off the roof and he literally couldn't reach his gun because his arms were on the roof trying to pull himself up? It might be a different situation. So I think we do have to wait for more information there, although I am concerned based on what I've heard so far, because he was able to get off those shots that he took at Donald Trump, killing someone in the crowd, wounding the president in that moment. And I think I said, I'm not sure if I said, so it was about 150 yards, which is it was 3 times as many then would be feet. So this was my understanding for the type of weapon involved. So this is kind of at the outer bounds of whether you can shoot, effectively from that distance. So any kind of distraction they were going to be able to distract the shooter was going to dramatically reduce the likelihood of him actually succeeding. But it should never have come to that, because they should have had that roof covered. We're seeing a lot of reporting about whether different Secret Service people were deployed. I know that Susan Crabtree, who you just wrote a statement from, who's a Real Clear Politics White House reporter, she initially said it had something to do with the Secret Service being moved onto Jill Biden's detour. Now, the Secret Service came out and said that is not true. They utterly disagree with that analysis, so we shall see.
Right, that it's very, very wrong, and we didn't divert resources from FPOTUS. It should be FLOTUS. I don't know if that's female president of the United States, a gaffe from Secret Service. We're learning a bit about who's running the country there. No, obviously saying that, for field office teams, they're just like different operations teams entirely. There's not a trading of personnel there. The Secret Service spokesperson has really been outspoken since all of this happened, saying there's an untrue assertion that a former member of, the former president's team, Donald Trump's team, requested additional security resources and that those were rebuffed. He says this is absolutely false. Any assertion that they asked for more security there in Butler, Pennsylvania. So there's a lot of, misinformation out there, false reports, people that are saying things that run counter to what the official statement from the Secret Service is. And so to make sense of all of this, you really should be refreshing Twitter on a constant basis to see what all the official spokespeople are saying. But I think at the end of the day, there's really nothing they could say that could change how people feel about this, because the president was shot. It doesn't really matter if they say, oh, it was like extraordinary circumstances, we were not prepared. There's really no excuse for something like this happening. When
there's video that you can watch of this on social media, when Ronald Reagan was shot at, Secret Service had him covered and safe in 0.3 seconds. So even the amount of time it took for something to happen in the video footage we watched, it was kind of surreal watching. And I know it was fairly quick, but it's time compresses when those sorts of things are happening. So I don't know. In terms of the you mentioned the female Secret Service officer who's drawing a lot of attention. Yeah, again, I want to learn more about why they thought that person is qualified or how they got into that role. I know a lot of conservatives are going to say this is DEI and this is prioritizing the hiring of females in this case to do a job that traditionally was done by men. I have no idea whether that criticism has any validity, but the Secret Service is definitely going to be under a microscope based on their response, and also the fact that RFK Jr. has not had Secret Service protection is a very interesting and I think suspect thing. We are going to talk about that in greater detail on the show later today. We've got an RFK campaign surrogate to talk with it about, so you won't want to miss that. Stay tuned for more Rising.
Sticks and stones may break your bones and words may kill you? That's the argument many Republicans have been making over the weekend, that the language used by Democrats enabled the assassination attempt. For example, one of Trump's top contenders for his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, tweeted, quote, "Today is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of Biden's campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs." That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. And Senator Tim Scott, who's also been floated as a potential VP pick, wrote, quote, "Congressman Scalise, Justice Kavanaugh, and now President Trump, for years, Democrats and their allies in the media have recklessly stoked fears, calling President Trump and other conservatives threats to democracy. Their inflammatory rhetoric puts lives at risk."
The popular X account End Wokeness shared this recent clip of former Senator Claire McCaskill on MSNBC with the caption, "This rhetoric is what got us here." Let's watch it.
A lot of people have tried to draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler and the use of the terminology like vermin and the drive that those men had towards autocracy and dictatorship. The difference, though, I think makes Donald Trump even more dangerous, and that is he has no philosophy he believes in. He is not trying to expand the boundaries of the United States of America. He's not trying to overcome a neighboring country like Putin is in Ukraine. He is not going for some grandiose scheme of international dominance. All he wants is to look in the mirror and see a guy who's president. All he cares about is selfish self-promotion. That's the only philosophy he has, which makes him even more dangerous because he has actually said out loud that it would be okay to terminate the Constitution to keep him in power.
But CNN's Anderson Cooper doesn't think the rhetoric is a one-sided problem. Watch his exchange with House Speaker Mike Johnson.
But here's the thing. I mean, it's an objective truth that Donald Trump is probably the most persecuted and attacked political figure in history, certainly among presidents, maybe at least since Abraham Lincoln, Civil War era. And that takes a toll. I mean, when my colleagues go out, Democrat colleagues, and say democracy will end, the republic will be in an emergency stage if Donald Trump wins for president, it's just not true. It's another election. And when they say that kind of rhetoric and they heat it up like that, there are people out there that take these things to heart and they act upon them. Politicians are not responsible for that, but we do have a responsibility to be responsible. I mean, we're not asking for much. Let's just dial the rhetoric down. Let's have a vigorous debate. That's what our country's built upon, but we have to see one another as fellow Americans and not enemies.
I do want to point out, just for fairness, I don't want to get into an argument about this, but the former president himself has also used that kind of rhetoric. He said on June 27th, Joe Biden is a threat to democracy, a threat to the survival and existence of our country itself. That's certainly the same kind of language you're talking about.
Listen, everybody is prone to overstatement, okay? I mean, a few days ago, earlier this week, Joe Biden actually said we need to put Donald Trump in the bullseye. I mean, right? I don't think either of those men meant to imply anything beyond just rhetoric, but the point is the rhetoric has consequences.
Meanwhile, journalist Michael Schellenberger called out The Atlantic for an article blaming Trump for his own assassination. In the article, The Atlantic wrote, quote, "Violence stalks the president who has rejoiced in violence to others." And, quote, "Now the bloodshed that Trump has done so much to incite against others has touched him as well." So yes, lots of conversation on social media about the role rhetoric played in what happened. Now, look, maybe you can say turnabout is fair play, because it is the case that 4 years, with mass shootings and with other things happening, the reaction to the shooting of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, a Democrat in Arizona, by a deranged gunman, the reaction to that from the New York Times, the media, from Democrats, was that Republican rhetoric has inspired this kind of attack, and it was the blast target zone map was specifically where they had Republicans had put out a map showing a gun target over her district, and that kind of thing. They were blamed explicitly for this. Republicans were, even though there was zero evidence that the shooter had seen the map or that he was even motivated by Republican politics or was even particularly conservative. He was just a crazy person, and so on. So I get that. Now, Republicans feel like this is their moment to do that same thing. Like the bullseye comment, I mean, come on. That's just the way, that to me, that's the same thing as the target thing over the map for Gabby Giffords. I think we got to be very careful about casually blaming heated rhetoric we don't even really know what motivated this guy. We don't even know that he's like some committed blue anon Democrat type person. We don't know. And in any case, it is certainly true that Trump and many Republicans use heated rhetoric as well. Since I'm a free speech guy, I'm always very, very much not on board with like blaming other people's rhetoric for your violent actions. Your violent actions are your fault, and no one made you do it, and I want more caution there. So I did not particularly enjoy these comments from J.D. Vance, who's our potential next vice president, rumored to be the pick. We're going to find out later today. Speaker Mike Johnson and others saying that it's really, the violent rhetoric of Democrats is what causes this kind of thing. Everyone can turn down their rhetoric, and that would be nice, but let's not lose sight of, people's actions have consequences.
Yeah, the way I see this election is we have two guys motivated by ego. Sarah McCaskill's a little bit right about that, or Claire McCaskill's a little bit right about that. I think that when we consider Joe Biden wants to continue running despite the top donors in his party, his top advisors, behind closed doors telling reporters they want him to step down, but a lot of people just publicly saying they want him to step down. And he's saying, absolutely not, I want to be the president. It seems very ego-driven. A lot of people have labeled it as such. Donald Trump's rise to power, a lot of people have also labeled as ego-driven. His former producers at his reality TV show, The Apprentice, have said that he's very ego-driven and views the world
people in politics
terms of
are
attention
almost by definition
and celebrity.
Ego-driven.
Right, and couldn't be more disconnected from the American people. And so the way I think we should all be processing this event is that we've been told by either side that there's a threat existentially to our existence, whether it's democracy, whether it's freedom. And there's really not. But a lot of people feel it because they're struggling to afford health care. They're struggling to pay their bills to keep a roof over their head the next week. They feel a threat to their existence. They feel like they're tinkering on the edge of being homeless, of being without food, being without the ability to provide for their families. And both parties, every person in the ruling class in the United States is responsible for that and complicit in that. And so the idea that we're being told you belong to this tribe, and actually, if you're a Democrat, the Republicans are a threat to your existence. And if you are a Republican, you're told the Democrats, for whatever reason, are a threat to your existence. And that is causing people to think, okay, well, if I do this great act and I put my own life on the line, I'll be able to protect our existence. That's a very scary place for our politics to be. And it's sad that it's the same people saying political violence is never acceptable that are totally okay with people struggling to make ends meet, people dying because they can't afford health insurance, people losing their homes and living on the streets. Is that not political violence too? Because there are policy failures that result in that being reality every day for everyday people in America.
Well, policy has taken a back seat in terms of Democratic messaging about the threat that they say Trump represents, right? It's all about the threat to the institutions. It's all about the threat to the process. It's been less and their approach has been to talk less and less about issues. I think one of the reasons Donald Trump is doing so well, apart from the spectacularly positive news cycle he's enjoyed for the last several weeks, is that they show Trump is more trusted on the issues right now that matter to Americans the most: immigration, the state of the economy, and so on. Whatever Trump is doing and saying on these issues is winning the support of the people, while at least at the elite level, Democrats and Democratic media are solely focused on the kind of threat to democracy. And I do think, I mean, it is, you know, it's, I'm seeing some in that camp being asked, okay, if you've said Trump is a Hitler-esque figure and that democracy could end if he's elected, does that, you know, this is from the perspective of someone questioning someone who feels that way. Does that justify then taking some kind of extraordinary action to prevent him from winning the election? Now, I would say obviously not. You can't say democracy is under assault and this is also bad, and then say, and I'm willing to do totally anti-democratic things, including commit violence to stop this kind of shock to the system. That's the sort of just, you know, blind leading the blind kind of approach to politics. Now, I'm not seeing anyone actually defend that. What they're saying is, you know, the rhetoric, it's sometimes too heated, but there has been rhetoric on the other side. And, you know, people would benefit from, you know, turning down the dials, I think, in general, or concentrating, like you said, more on actual policy differences. Describe what you think the threat is on policy, or how you think working people's lives are going to be worse because of this or that policy, and you know, not make these infantile Hitler comparisons all the time.
Right. And of course, Trump's camp is saying immigration's this existential threat. When they talk about immigration, they're not being precise about policy or what the numbers look like, or the reality that Biden has deported more Haitian migrants than any president before him. They're not talking about how he's increased personnel at the
border. No one wants to talk about that, because Democrats don't want to admit that, and Republicans don't want to admit that.
Exactly. And so it's true that the stance of Democrats is somehow both. Yeah. Trump is an authoritarian fascist like Hitler, and we should never use political violence to address that, despite the categorization of World War II and fighting Hitler and fighting fascism being called the only just or the only good war ever. So political violence made sense there. Simultaneously, you have a genocide happening in Gaza, and Democrats saying political violence is never acceptable. When political violence is used as the reason, they're attacking Hamas leaders, Hamas soldiers, some of which who are children, and also civilians. And so at what point do we just say, both parties are so hypocritical, they're clearly making up these threats to existence to maintain their power, and really they don't care if an authoritarian takes over on one side, and they don't care if Democrats take over on the other side. They're willing to use this rhetoric to get as many votes as possible because they care about one thing, and that's power. Yeah, they're not even, for Democrats saying that Trump is Hitler, right, but they're not even willing to swap out to Joe Biden's feelings that he should still be running for re-election somehow, even when they show Kamala Harris polls showing her still losing but doing better against Trump than Biden, having more of a chance. They're like, nah, we're not going to. We need to stop Hitler, but it's not so important that we're going to like risk hurting Biden's feelings. Like, that seems to be what their operating strategy is. Again, that's not from my perspective. That's from their perspective. And I think a lot of people are going, huh? Did his feelings matter that much? I know he's really enjoying this run for president, but that's more important than, again, from their perspective. I don't think Trump is Hitler, but they're saying Trump is Hitler. You start to think that they don't actually believe it. It's just a rhetorical strategy. I think it's possible they believe it and they just don't care, because like we've seen many Democrats now say, the point of having Joe Biden become the president when Bernie could have beat Trump was actually because we wanted a candidate that could beat Bernie Sanders. Not we wanted a candidate that could beat Donald Trump. Joe Biden did by a very slim margin, and it's not looking too good in 2024, but he's still the candidate. They hate the far left more than they hate the right, and they won on progressive policies. There's something to that. More Rising right after this. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was 9 years old when his father was shot while running for president in 1968. In fact, the Kennedy clan has always been a target for political violence, so it may come as a surprise that RFK Jr. has not been granted Secret Service protection so far as he makes his bid for the Oval Office in 2024. Now, after the weekend's events, some are calling for that to change. Democratic Governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, wrote this on X: "I encourage the president to immediately provide Secret Service protection for Robert Kennedy Jr." Bobby Kennedy III made the following statement on X, quote, unsecured rooftop 150 yards away. Multiple witnesses saying they were screaming at Secret Service and cops for 3 to 4 minutes as they watched the guy with the rifle crawl to the spot and line up his shot. Take your Secret Service and shove it up your A. Prayers to Trump and his family. Now here to talk about this and more is Tony Lyons, co-founder of American Values and RFK Jr. PAC. Thank you so much for coming on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So I want to get into this. This has been a topic on the campaign for a while, the denial of RFK Jr. security detail from the Secret Service. What do you make of this now? Do you see this changing given the weekend's events?
I think that if it doesn't change, it really borders on a criminal act by the Biden administration. I mean, they have done so much to dismantle democracy. And when it comes to the way they've treated Bobby Kennedy, so they colluded with big tech companies to censor him. They rigged the primaries. They rigged the whole debate system. They worked to get hit pieces in major newspapers. They denied him, the protection that he really is legally entitled to. They've sued him in state after state to try to keep him off the ballot. So they're spending all of this money to dismantle democracy. And then I think you see that it can lead to these kinds of things, that there are 3 major candidates and all 3 of them need just the best possible protection.
Yeah, I think at this point it's just utterly inexcusable, if it wasn't already, for him to not have Secret Service protection. Although at the same time, having watched the performance of the Secret Service during the attempted assassination of Donald Trump over the weekend, and obviously we need to learn more facts and have there be an independent investigation and understand exactly what went wrong. But so many people are thinking and looking, how could they have missed that rooftop that the shooter was able to fire those shots off from? Would RFK Jr. even want Secret Service protection versus whatever private security he is able to have instead?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we definitely need to have that investigated to find out what possibly happened there. But, Bobby Kennedy is entitled to this protection and he should be allowed to have it. And, then once he has it, he can work to make sure that it's good enough and that he can trust the people who are working for him.
Now, Tony, we've talked a lot about the financial backing behind RFK Jr., how hard it is to be an independent candidate given the political landscape in the United States. Not supplying RFK Jr. with Secret Service means that he is financing the security he has on the trail himself. And of course, finances are a major constraint that the Biden camp and the Trump camp don't have to consider in the same way RFK Jr. does. Can you give us an idea of what that figure looks like, if you know?
It's definitely costing millions and millions of dollars. So, Bobby Kennedy has said that 35 cents out of every dollar that they raise goes to protection. So, that's just another political game that they're draining his campaign by denying him the protection that he is so clearly entitled to and so clearly needs.
So the last few weeks, the politics of it has been a bad few weeks for President Biden, his disastrous debate performance, so many conversations about whether he's physically and mentally capable of serving as president for another 4 years or even right now. And then Donald Trump, surviving a attempted assassination, thankfully unharmed, very narrow. It could have gone, much different in a matter of inches here. Has this iconic photo, is changing his speech to focus on unity at the upcoming RNC. I know that many Democrats are basically giving up hope on even potentially Biden defeating Trump in November. How does this impact the Kennedy campaign and the message RFK Jr. is bringing on the campaign trail?
So it's clear that, Joe Biden can't beat Donald Trump. And, anybody who doesn't see that is really kind of blind to all the data that's come out. So I think that what the Democratic Party ought to be doing is looking at Bobby Kennedy, that he is the one who can actually, give Donald Trump a run for his money, that in the polling that we've seen, he beats Trump. And, that's an incredible thing that the Democratic Party hasn't looked at that option, that there are only two major candidates who can win this election, and those are Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy.
Now, do you think there is a possibility that that could change before the DNC, convention in Chicago? I've heard a lot of people that are not deep in the politics of the Democratic Party suggest that RFK Jr. should be the Democratic candidate and that they would likely beat Donald Trump if he was. When I think of establishment Democrats, I think that they would never touch RFK Jr. You've seen what a lot of these folks say about him. Do you think this is at all possible that delegates could get behind him?
Really hard to tell. I mean, I think there's this deep hunger in this country for a common sense outsider, for somebody who's going to make common sense common once again. And Bobby Kennedy definitely is that person. And he's a unity candidate. He has pledged to bring in people to his administration from all different points of view, Democrats, Republicans, outsiders of all kinds. So he's a great candidate for this moment. And I think that the only reason that the DNC and that the Democratic Party would not look seriously at Bobby Kennedy is corruption, is that they know that Bobby Kennedy is a danger to the swamp, to a certain sort of corruption in DC that has been there for a long time, that benefits lots of people, benefits lots of Democrats, and they don't want that to end. But if they really just wanted to win, then I think they would look very closely.
The rhetoric in the country around politics right now is coming under scrutiny. Obviously, you hear a lot of heated things from both sides of the political spectrum, but I think the way that many Democrats and many in the media have described former President Trump is right now especially being scrutinized. All this talk of Hitler and authoritarianism and fascism, and you can feel that way about these policies. I actually think many of the policies of both of our most recent presidents had authoritarian overtones, and I know RFK Jr. is, for instance, running on reversing a lot of the COVID authoritarianism that was so frustrating to so many Americans under both administrations. At the same time, if you demonize your political opponents to that degree, are you giving license? Are you tacitly encouraging people to resort to desperate measures? That we're being told democracy is at stake, but that at the same time, I would argue counter-democratic means have been deployed against, for instance, Donald Trump in terms of trying to keep him off the ballot, in terms of prosecuting him for a number of things. What do you think, and how is RFK Jr. reacting to this this political moment in terms of the rhetoric coming from both Republicans and Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly true that Joe Biden, said that Donald Trump should be in the bullseye. He's talked about violence in the past. He talked about the possibility of killing Putin. He talked about the possibility of blowing up the Russian pipeline. So Bobby Kennedy has repeatedly come out and said that he doesn't want to win an election based on political games, based on any kind of violence, based on censorship. He wants there to be real dialogue and debate. He wants there to be unity. And so I think that's what he represents. He represents somebody who believes in the Constitution, who believes in freedom, who believes in having a system of electing people in this country that is not as corrupted as we've seen it to be. And that we need really to have, not only real debate, but we need people to be elected with ballots, with ballots and, not ever with bullets.
Now, Tony, on a less serious note, I've heard you call him Bobby Kennedy quite a bit. Is that what we're going with now? Are we doing away with RFK Jr. when we refer to his candidacy? Is it Bobby Kennedy? I kind of like that.
Yeah, I really like Bobby Kennedy, but, lots of people call him RFK Jr., so, there are a bunch of variations.
All right, Bobby Kennedy will continue to follow his candidacy, and as always, it's great talking with you, Tony. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much.
The Republican National Convention is kicking off today, and it's a different convention than it was going to be just 3 days ago. The attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump will change the trajectory of the RNC this week. Conversations will be different, and security strategies could be different as well.
Joining us now from Milwaukee to discuss is GOP strategist Whitley Yates. Thanks for coming on, Whitney.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's get into it. Obviously, there's a shadow cast over this convention as everyone comes to meet in Milwaukee from the attempted assassination of Trump. Just tell us, Whitley, what's the general mood there?
You know, I wouldn't even say it's a shadow. There is definitely an energy here, an energy of resilience, an energy of perseverance. People are excited. They cannot wait to hear from former President Trump, specifically after the attempted assassination. Now, I'm not going to pretend like there haven't been increased security measures, like the Secret Service are checking vehicles. It is causing backed up traffic all through the streets of Milwaukee, and even some sidewalks that you're walking through, you have to go through Secret Service and police.
Yes, an incredible several days for Donald Trump surviving an assassination. We've heard that he has reworked his speech, his planned remarks. You know, beyond just the energy, is there a perception among people there? You know, I think this campaign is in a very different place than it was just a few weeks ago, where frankly, Donald Trump's likelihood of winning in November has never seemed higher to me than it does right now. Is that something that people at the convention are processing that, and does it inform, you know, the strategy Trump is going to deploy from now on? You know, someone now almost moving on to the job of reassuring Americans on the other side of the political spectrum that he's their president as well, focusing on unity, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I would say a lot of the delegates I've talked to, I've spoken to some from California as well as Texas, some even from Alaska, are all really just talking about his resilience and how, you know, through these terrible circumstances, he was able to come out on top and still be able to instill in people and those who were at the rally and the American people that were watching that he is the person for the job. And the way that he was able to triumph over the transgression of that situation has not been lost on the supporters here at the RNC. And I would say that it has created a new level of momentum in not only supporting him, but getting him across that finish line in November.
Now, what are you expecting to be different given what happened there on Saturday in Pennsylvania? A lot of folks are expecting a vice presidential pick coming out of Donald Trump. We've seen J.D. Vance really in lockstep. Do you see any major events at the RNC changing because of what happened?
I don't see any major events changing. I do see potentially some of the speakers changing. And honestly, the tone of the convention, I think, is going to be different. I think before it was going to be a tone of really just rallying people behind him and getting people excited for him to be the nominee. And it was going to be the message was going to be to the people that were going to be in the audience, right? The delegates. But I think this message that we're going to hear from him and all the other speakers is going to be a message for America. It's for those watching who are undecided. It's for those who are looking at this campaign to see if this is someone that they can be in alignment with. And so I think it's going to broaden his message because he needs to reach more people. And I think the people here, he already has in the bank.
So we are awaiting it could be any minute now, it could be later today, but it is expected to be today, the announcement of Trump's vice presidential pick. There's been a lot of chatter lately that it might be Senator J.D. Vance. I believe Marco Rubio, Doug Burgum, and potentially a few others are still in the mix, but those are the three names I've heard most often now. I'm seeing it reported that a motorcade has showed up to J.D. Vance's house, and at the same time that Trump, I think, just told Bret Baier that maybe the pick's going to surprise us. I don't know what that means. Do you have any insights into the VP race speculation stuff going on? Did have you seen, did J.D. Vance just get out of a car and run up to the stage or something like that?
He did not do that. As I stated before on The Rising, I do think it may surprise us, but I'm going to be honest. My sources are saying that J.D. Vance does look like the presumptive VP pick. Now, I don't know how secure those sources are, but he is looking really good right now, considering all of the chatter that's been happening. But I would not be surprised once again to receive any type of curveball from left field, specifically in dealing with President Trump and the way in which he likes to surprise not only just his supporters, but also those that disagree with him as well.
It seems that following the debates with Biden, we've seen the Trump campaign sort of have this snowball effect of so many positive news events coming his way. Although the assassination event was horrific, a lot of people saw that photo. They saw this as a moment of strength for Trump's campaign, many people calling him a hero coming out of that. And today, we've seen now that Judge Aileen has dismissed this case against Donald Trump because of Jack Smith's unconstitutional, potentially, appointment there. What has the response and vibe been around that breaking news coming out this morning?
I spoke to a few delegates this morning and I asked about how they were feeling, considering that the documents case has been thrown out and a lot of them are so excited. The legal issues that were looming over former President Trump was really just a rain cloud over not only his election, but a lot of the delegates and a lot of his supporters. So to see that rain cloud be removed and to be able to maneuver and move on and focus on policies and positions that are going to best suit Americans is what they're looking forward to.
Incredible. Whitley Yates, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. How will the assassination attempt on former President Trump impact President Biden and his chances in the 2024 race? Well, for one thing, the calls to replace President Biden as the Democratic nominee have appeared to be taking a back seat. That's according to reporting from Axios. Senior House Democrats said that, quote, "We've all resigned ourselves to a second Trump presidency," and suggested that, quote, the post-shooting atmosphere in the party is too chaotic for internal battles over leadership. Biden has spoken 3 times since the rally on Saturday. He called for unity and unsurprisingly stumbled multiple times. Let's watch.
No violence on our streets. That's how democracy should work. We debate and disagree. We compare and contrast the character of the candidates, the records, the issues, the agenda, the vision for America. But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. You know, that's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets.
And here he is almost saying, "Make America great again."
So tonight, I'm asking every American to recommit to make America, think about it. What's make
Pollster Frank Luntz is predicting that the assassination attempt will boost Trump's chances at winning the election. He says, quote, "Trump's supporters will be energized. Biden supporters will be demoralized. Every Trump supporter will now be a Trump voter, but some Democrats will end up staying home. That turnout difference is going to be worth 1 or 2%. And that's the election." This has been a disastrous series of political developments for Biden over the last several weeks. It's interesting that the failed assassination attempt against Donald Trump has some Democrats saying we're not even going to bother trying to go forward with the swap Biden out thing because we're not going to win anyway. It seems to be the impression I'm getting from Democrats. Others are saying that's not true. It's wild to me that this Trump becoming even more likely to win now based on what happened. And, we shouldn't exaggerate it. This is still going to be a close election. It's still a very divided country. It's not like Trump isn't suddenly up 50 points in Pennsylvania or something. It's still close in the swing states. He's up, he's winning, but it's still close in the swing states. The election is by no means over. But and what happened to Trump over the weekend does not suddenly change that. Doesn't mean he's going to win like 8,000 electoral votes or something. It helps him. It's not the end. But Democrats are just giving up. They're totally giving up. If what the behind-the-scenes political reporting we're hearing is true, they're totally giving up.
Biden has photos behind him of his family there. It's almost giving like, please, I'm a human too. I have kids. I have a wife and kids. All of the leaders saying, don't do political violence. Political violence is bad. Whenever leaders are shot, is very much giving like French leaders pleading for their lives during the French Revolution. For some reason, they don't care about political violence when it happens to everyday people, but nevertheless, the polling is interesting. We have polling from July 9th through the 12th. So it was after Biden had a chance to address his debate performance, but simultaneously was before the attempted assassination of Trump. And it's in Pennsylvania and Virginia, 2 battleground states. It shows Trump with 48%, Biden with 45%. In both states, also Harris was in a head-to-head matchup in this poll. In Pennsylvania, 47 Harris, 48 Trump, and in Virginia, 44 Trump, 48 Harris. All of these numbers are within the margin of error. As with every poll right now, I think we're all just anxiously waiting to see what these phone calls that I'm sure are going out right now to voters look like following this assassination.
Trump doesn't need to win Virginia. If he ends up winning Virginia, he will be winning in a landslide. He's winning anyway. If he gets Virginia, that means it's over. That means he's going to have won many of the other actual swing states. My understanding of the Biden campaign strategy at this point, to the extent there is one, is that they are giving up on Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. They are assuming that Trump is going to win those states. The Biden strategy to win is the basically what Hillary needed to do in 2016. Biden needs to hold on to, because he won them in 2020, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and if he wins those 3, that will give him this narrow victory. Now, the polls there show him, I think, still ahead, maybe slightly in Michigan, Wisconsin, but down in Pennsylvania. And then obviously the most recent news could impact things further. But Biden needs to spend a lot of time there. He needs to send his surrogates there. He needs the kind of voters there. He needs to reassure the working class voters that he has their back and Donald Trump's policies will be harmful for them. I don't know that this existential threat to democracy argument matters as much to the specific kind of voters he needs to bring back into the fold in those states. And whereas Trump's toughness, his surviving his brush with death, his fist pump, all that stuff seems to me very well positioned to designed to position Trump well with those kinds of voters.
I have heard people, mostly Democratic aligned commentators, say that this event has now quelled all of the voices saying we need to replace Joe Biden.
Yeah, it has.
No,
why?
Why?
I don't know why.
No, it shouldn't. They're saying something that they want to manifest into reality, Robby. I still want them to replace Joe Biden, even more so now, because how are you going to sound worse than a guy who literally got shot in the head? You look ridiculous. I think they absolutely need to replace Joe Biden now more than ever, because what's the debate going to look like the next time around? He's saying battle box instead of ballot box time and again. And finally, instead of editing the official transcript, it says battle box and in parentheses, ballot box, because that's what we believe Joe meant. But it really paints a picture at a time when we're trying to quell violence that the election will be violent to say battle box. His gaffes could cost us the election.
Even Biden is almost on board with "Make America Great Again." He almost said it during what, prepared remarks? He was just reading a speech there, and he almost said, "Make America Great Again." At this point, I don't know how they could possibly do worse, how things could conceivably end up worse for the Democratic Party. Yes, they should still be. Now, I was saying that even if they were making a hearty effort to swap Joe out, they were still going to fail, because Biden at the end of the day is not going away and wants to continue running for president, is going to do so. I've been very on the record about that. But now they're not even trying anymore. I mean, you could read into that. Maybe they realize they failed. Maybe they're finally listening to Robby and they're like, Robby's right. Nothing we do is going to make Joe Biden not want to be the presidential nominee anymore. All we're going to do is damage his candidacy further, so we're not going to try anymore. I actually think that would be a perfectly rational strategy. It would be better for Democrats if Biden did step aside, but he's never, ever, 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 ever going to do so. And so they might as well resign themselves to having him be the candidate and they should be working to prepare him better, to talk about issues affecting the working class, to talk about, the right-wing policies that Trump is going to do, talk about abortion, et cetera. They need to lean into that. I think they should lean into that more than democracy destabilization, in effect. I don't think anyone's really buying. Certainly, the people already voting for them are buying it. I don't think that's a good outreach strategy. And Donald Trump seems as American and patriotic and committed to beloved American institutions than ever before in terms of the rhetoric he deployed during the debate, in terms of the sort of symbol message he's sending lately. It's just not going to work.
There were a couple things that stood out to me from what the news cycle has forgotten to the benefit of a lot of Democratic strategists. Biden's 59-minute Q&A. He was 55 minutes late for it. But I listened to what he had to say in that key press conference over the weekend that I believe would have been bigger news if Saturday's events didn't unfold. But what he said was, okay, if people at the convention, the delegates, want to cast their votes that would be for me, for someone else, they're at liberty to do so. That was a very interesting thing to hear come out of Joe Biden's mouth. We also heard Joe Biden talk about the economy and how he has the best economy ever, but it was just riddled with enough gaffes that while he did make coherent points, it's not true that Democratic strategists said he sounded like a foreign policy expert or genius. There were points where he talked about closed-door meetings and said, I think I can say this. I think it's fine if I say this out loud, and then proceeded to say what could have been classified information. It was really just a mess, but we'll see what the delegates do now that they have Biden's blessing to do something else.
I think they're going to stick by him, but we shall see more rising right after this.
The gun used to target President Trump was the AR-15. It's America's most popular and divisive icon. It is the most popular rifle that's been at the center of so many mass shootings. At schools, at movie theaters, at grocery stores, just about any place Americans gather. It's not usually the weapon of choice for snipers, as it has limited range and smaller bullets, according to the Wall Street Journal. 20 million gun owners have one, up from 400,000 in the early 1990s. What it lacks in range, it makes up for in firepower. It unleashes a high volume of lead at close range. It's also become the center of debate over gun ownership in this country, politics, and threats of a gun ban.
Trump once said in an interview with a gun blog, gun banners are unfortunately preoccupied with the AR-15 magazine capacity, grips, and other aesthetics precisely because of its popularity. 2016, he won the backing of the National Rifle Association, and today, though, the gun control movement is seizing this moment to see whether it can get some GOP members on its side. Democrats should introduce a gun control bill called the Donald Trump Safety and Gun Control Bill and make Republicans vote against it, said one person on social media. So the gun, yes, is an AR-15, which I understand, according to the Wall Street Journal, can be accurate up to 600 yards away. So this was well within that range. He was about 150 yards away, the shooter was, on that rooftop. Now, it's not a sniper rifle, obviously. It's not that weapon, which has been a fear of that assassins would use that in the past. This is the first time the AR-15 is being used specifically for an attempted assassination. The Ronald Reagan would-be assassin, John Hinckley Jr., used a revolver when he attempted to do that in 1981. Now, obviously, the AR-15 has been used in mass shootings, usually at close range, as in the various school shootings where that was used, although in the Vegas mass shooting, the person did use an AR-15 there, and he was shooting not at close range. Now, he was not trying to take out a specific target. He was just firing on the crowd there. So that is the history of the AR-15 in these kinds of things.
Right, and it's become the target of a lot of liberals very upset about people who use guns for mass shootings, rightfully so. But oftentimes, whether or not they have an AR-15, the big issue is, or I should say access to one. A lot of times they're taking a gun that belonged to someone else, usually a family member, or it's been purchased illegally. So they circumvented the existing gun control laws in order to get it. But I do think the chief problem with people who are mass shooters, or in this case, someone who's an assassin, is that these folks are on the FBI's radar. And they slip through the FBI's fingers almost willingly. And everyone after this happened was like, oh, this guy's probably someone who was on the FBI's radar. And sure enough, when it finally came out that he had been flagged to the FBI, a lot of people were upset. So instead of these sweeping gun bans that a lot of folks want to propose on what they call assault weapons, which even if you go to the California's legal definition, one of the states that bans Armalite rifles and the AK series as well, they don't specify what it means to be an assault weapon. Rather, they give a list of the models that are banned. And so there is not a working definition at the national level or even across states.
I'm surprised. I thought we were going to argue about this. I agree with what you're saying very strongly. The assault style weapons have been subjected to a lot of scrutiny because of their prominence in these very shocking, very scarring mass shooting events. The issue is that, mass shootings, school shootings, Parkland, those kind of things are very not representative of gun violence in America. The overwhelming majority of gun incidents involve handguns, involve the kind of weapons that are pervasive, that are everywhere. There's so many. There's an uncontrollable amount of illegally owned handguns just on the streets of our country, and those are used the overwhelming majority of the time. Now, they can't do as much damage as rapidly as something like the AR-15, so I understand why. The AR-15 has been used to gun down children at their desks in schools. It's horrifying. It's I think a difficult problem to prevent. And even if we somehow were able to prevent that amount of violence, that'd be a drop in the bucket compared to how most gun violence unfolds. So that's always been my response to people who want to clamp down on this type of weapon. And also, the vast majority of people who own an AR-15 are legal gun owners who operate it safely and know how to use this firearm and respect its awesome power and will not be engaged in irresponsible activity with it. The question becomes, how do we prevent deranged people, crazy people, from having access to an AR-15 or to having access to any weapon? And as you point out, in the past, and I don't know yet if it's the case with this guy, but it was the case with the Parkland shooter. It was the case with so many of these others that, yes, they were reported to law enforcement. They were reported specifically to the FBI, and nothing was done. Again, it's another, see something, say something kind of attitude that we have. People do that. People speak up. People understand that there's a danger, and they make law enforcement aware. They make the officials aware, and then nothing gets followed up on. In this case, they have the shooter on the rooftop is being pointed out by bystanders repeatedly. They're videotaping him. You can see video footage of people holding up their cell phone cameras and say, "Oh my God, there's somebody on the roof. Do something about it." And the police, we're going to find out whether there was negligence there, but it certainly seems like it took a lot longer than it was supposed to. When they're calling him out, I mean, why was he able to shoot at all? Why wasn't he taken out before it got to that? I'm reading about the protocol they're supposed to fire, and it's like, or that they're supposed to follow. Like there's a guy with a gun on a rooftop 150 yards away from where Donald Trump is giving a speech, and they're not doing anything about it. They had to wait for him to fire before they were going to take any action. That seems crazy to me. So the official response in terms of gun safety is always a little bit suspect.
Well, it is hilarious branding to say we're going to pass some gun control legislation or try to and label it the Donald Trump Gun Safety Act.
That's not going to fool any Republicans.
It's funny, but even if, instead of going the route of red flag laws, meaning that if the FBI identifies someone that seems to be the type of person who would do a mass shooting based on things they've said, what people around them say, let's let them disarm that individual or have a watchful eye on that individual so something like this does not happen, or a school shooting. I think that even if we took the route of gun control, if what you want to have happen is there to be no more mass shootings or assassinations, does the policy you're pursuing achieve that ends? That's a question that I see a lot of members of the Democratic Party not asking when it comes to this. And a lot of people point to Australia's gun buyback legislation, where they were buying guns back at market rate. In 5 years, they got 659,000 weapons. Do you know how many weapons we have in the United States? 393 million plus. It would take hundreds of years to buy back all of the guns. Moreover, the guns that were surrendered to the state were P rifles and shotguns overwhelmingly. Only 204 were assault rifles. So when we think about, even if we take the most extreme and expensive policy to try and get these guns back, it's very likely to not work. So what do we have? we could actually empower the FBI to respond when people seem like real threats. And I think maybe more people will be on board with that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this shows that you're a rural leftist. You actually understand guns, and you've been around people, I think, who know how to use them.
Yeah.
You are yourself a gun owner. Yeah, it's exactly that. And in fact, every time liberals talk about doing more gun control, what ends up happening is the gun manufacturers, the salespeople, they sell tons more weapons because people end up buying them, afraid that that's about to become illegal. So that could very well happen here. Yeah, nobody's going to fall for a Donald Trump gun safety bill. Republicans are still going to vote against it. The politics of this, gun control is not super. Americans support in the abstract having more gun safety or background checks, things like I support that. That's fine. I think it's totally okay to scrutinize people who want to purchase a weapon like this. And yes, and people who have illegal guns who have been convicted of some other crime should not have access to weapons. And I'm fine disarming people who are not law abiding. But that's what we need to do. We need to keep dangerous people from having guns. It's difficult, obviously, but in many cases, we know they're dangerous people, and the government doesn't even do anything about that. So then why are you going to say we'll have even more gun control, and we'll be taking guns from law-abiding people? But law-abiding people aren't going to hurt anyone with the gun. In fact, you might want a law-abiding person to have a gun in case there's an emergency. Take them away from the dangerous psycho people. Why don't you start with that? Let's get better at doing that before we talk about any expanded gun control that's just going to inevitably not work, because these people, the people we all agree should not have guns, keep getting them.
I don't even have to do the policy wonk thing and be like, let's see the numbers of where this policy has been tried before, because basic common sense says anyone who is going to be an assassin or a mass shooter knows their fate. They're very likely to be taken out by law enforcement. They make that calculation that they're willing to die for the crime they are committing. Do you think they're afraid of prison time for illegally owning a gun?
Right.
There are so many guns that if they want one, they will be able to get access to one. They don't care about breaking the law in order to do it. The only channels that will allow us to identify this is if we embolden law enforcement with red flag laws. It's very common sense.
More Rising right after this. On what has become one of the biggest political news days of the year, MSNBC's Morning Joe has been pulled off the air. CNN reports that the decision was made to, quote, avoid a scenario in which one of the show's stable of 24+ guests might make an inappropriate comment on live television that could be used to assail the program and the network as a whole. CNN also notes that it's not the first time MSNBC has made this sort of programming decision in a charged political moment. Last year, after Hamas executed its deadly October 7th attack on Israel, MSNBC pulled 3 of its Muslim broadcasters from the air. It's not just MSNBC that's worried. Comedy Central's The Daily Show has axed its planned coverage of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee this week. Take a listen to the Hill columnist Steve Krakauer reacting to the news.
But if you can't trust Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski to lead a news coverage of that, what does that say about the program itself and the network itself, which every night when it comes to breaking news or a big political night and primetime is led by its opinion hosts as well. So I think this is enormous right now.
Spectator editor-at-large Ben Domenech similarly wrote on X, quote, NBC doesn't trust Joe Biden's favorite show to not damage the network with their comments on the assassination attempt. Joe and Mika and friends officially benched. To which National Review journalist Charles Cook wrote, quote, just wait until they find out about Joy Reid. So I think this is a massive indictment of Morning Joe, of Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, that their own network does not trust their commentary on the biggest day in news history in a while, reacting to the major political news stories. They're not trusted, their guests are not trusted to give commentary that the network is confident in. That's a major blow to them.
They could have given commentary on Biden's big 59-minute Q&A that went exceedingly well. The same day he called Zelensky President Putin and then went on to give commentary and call Kamala Harris Vice President Trump. They didn't want to talk about that.
These
Instead,
are very easy people to confuse. Anyone could make that mistake.
Right, yes. There's no difference really between Zelensky and Putin and Trump and Harris. But I think at the end of the day, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. is like advice you give to a child, not to newscasters.
not to your newscasters, not to your pundits.
Not to your trusted anchors on Morning Joe. Yeah, I think it's shocking, and I think they probably feel a little bit silenced right now. They probably feel like their network precisely doesn't trust them to give commentary, what they were hired to do. That's probably a difficult position to be in, and I bet they're questioning their position at the network. The decision by MSNBC to remove their Muslim anchors from the show, I felt similarly about. Why are you silencing people on one side of an issue? Let them give their commentary. To think that we're in a place where potentially words are so dangerous that they can't speak at all is scary.
Yeah, I think that I feel differently about that, the Muslim anchors being taken off, than I do about poor old Morning Joe and Mika. Well, now, first of all, in that case, MSNBC, well, I don't know if they denied it. They didn't address it, whether it was done for that reason. Mehdi Hassan was one of those figures and has not, as far as I can tell, subsequently said that that was the reason. And I don't know why that is, if it was in fact the reason. Now, I think it was a bad idea, to be clear, to not allow the views of Muslim anchors who might have offered a different or dissenting commentary on what was going on Gaza, although I shouldn't presume to have known what they were going to say about it just because they were Muslim, that they were going to say something counter to the Israeli narrative or whatever it was. That seemed like a very, content-based kind of act of censorship, if that was indeed the reason, which I'm perfectly willing to believe it was, although even the three victims of it have not said so thus far. In this case, I guess this is, it's kind of a heavy-handed. Their views are being suppressed by their employer. I mean, there's no way around that now, and you can think that's bad, but like, what does it say about that? This is Joe Biden's favorite show. It's his like major source of news.
What's he gonna
called
watch?
into it. Well, yeah, what's he gonna watch? But
yeah, he called into it and was like, and they were like, "Thank you, Joe."
Yeah, maybe that's why they're taking him off. They don't want Joe Biden to have the opportunity.
It ended up being bad
himself.
for his campaign.
Yeah. But it just says something not so good about your news commentary, that your bosses are afraid of it at this, again, at a day where that you want to be firing on all cylinders. I'm sure you woke up energized today. I did. I just got back from Las Vegas. I knew we were going to have a big show today. There's so much to talk about. We were able to, finally react and discuss the attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
And find appropriate guests with, I'm sure, less staff than Morning Joe has.
Yeah, we have about zero staff. We won't get into the production difficulties we've had as of late. Everyone behind the scenes on Rising, by the way, is working as hard as any human beings on Earth right now to deliver our show.
Harder than Morning Joe this morning.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe we can see if they want to help edit clips or something if Joe needs a job right now. But yeah, it's sucks to be them, I guess.
And people will lose their jobs over things they've tweeted and said. We already had Representative Benny Thompson fire a staffer over controversial post following the attempted assassination. That's their social media, their personal social media accounts. To think that pulling people from the air instead of doing a show, what's the point of having a news show in the first place if they can't talk about the biggest news in a very long time?
But it also should be very easy. It's shockingly easy to discuss this, even from an adversarial to Donald Trump perspective. It is very easy to say that, let's say, okay, I'm putting on my Morning Joe disguise right now. I'm Joe Scarborough, and I oppose Donald Trump. I think he's a threat to democracy. I am very concerned for our country. If Joe Biden is not reelected, we're going down a very dark path. Donald Trump is a bad man, and his policies are bad, and I can't stand him. But nevertheless, it was absolutely, totally wrong for someone to try to kill him. Violence is never acceptable, and that's how I feel. And we're going to have on guests who all feel that same way. It is beyond the pale to say otherwise. Like, that is very easy, even if you really don't like Donald Trump. But apparently they're not capable of it. Or they were worried they were not capable of it.
I mean, thankfully, we had time to process and think about our perspective on this and think about it enough that we can give commentary that's more than just what is breaking right now. Because this happened on Saturday. They had that much time to put together their Morning Joe show and respond to this news. This tells me that something about what was discussed, someone's opinion could have been, I want this guy dead, he should be taken out. Someone must have said something to indicate that they should not be on air. They had time to talk about what they would say. They had time to put together a show. This wasn't just some random decision. This had to come out of some kind of production meeting about what would be discussed and who they'd have on.
In other kind of media criticism news, there's been a lot of Republican criticizing of mainstream media headlines that describing what happened to Trump as it was happening. A lot of outlets said like loud noises heard, Trump taken off stage by Secret Service. It took a little bit of time before the headlines were updated to say no, Trump survived, is unharmed, but was hit with a shot. That took a while. Now, I disagree with some of the Republican commentary on this. I think it's okay to be cautious and want to like double check and not say it was gunfire before they had, it sounded like gunfire, but before they had that absolutely confirmed. That's fine. You don't want to get things wrong and jump the gun, so to speak. But CNN did have a headline that was a little bit more ridiculous than that. They had I have to look up exactly.
Secret Service interrupts Trump's speech, and it was like...
Yeah, no, theirs said Trump falls.
Yeah.
It said Secret Service takes Trump off stage after Trump falls. It said Trump falls was the headline. That was not so good. Again, even early on, there was a noise, there was effort to protect him. That was a bad headline that's going to get them in some deserved trouble there. So caution is okay. I think the headlines, even early on, should have reflected that there was a gun-like sound. But, let's be cautious. But CNN was even short of that. So.
Right. And to our viewers who would normally be watching Morning Joe right now, thank you. That does it for us today on Rising. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're available wherever you get your podcasts.
We will have another news-filled day tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, y'all.